Hi, I'm Sandy Brown, Mayor of the Town of Orangeville, and this is Talk 519 on Rogers TV. This is where we discuss matters that are of importance to residents of Orangeville and Dufferin County. Joining me today is Deputy Mayor Andy McIntosh and Nandini Syed, the Town Treasurer. And we're going to be discussing the budget in brief tonight. So welcome to the show, Andy and Nandini. Congratulations, Nandini, on your first budget. Did you buy new shoes?
Yes, I did.
Because that's an interesting thing. We see that at the federal level, and provincial level, and even the municipal level.
Yes,
well,
yes, I did.
That's wonderful. So that's great. So this is the second budget for this council. Mm-hmm. Again, we looked at fiscal responsibility, trying to keep taxes as low as possible, and we've managed to come through with just a 1.5% increase this year, which when you think about it, it's below cost of living. Mm-hmm. So we're going in the right direction as far as the overall tax rate for residents and businesses in our town. So I wonder, Andy, this is the second budget for this council, and what were your thoughts as you came into it?
It's interesting. Somebody actually asked me tonight a very interesting question. They asked me what was the proudest item on the budget that you were happy with, and my answer was basically we haven't had to cut anything. Mm-hmm. We've kept this budget very reasonable without cutting any service. So that's the part I'm most proud of, is we didn't have to cut any service to get to this number, and that's good fiscal planning and responsibility.
Yeah.
Right. So just to review, we've got for council and the public, the process looks like draft budget's presented.
Yeah.
Council discusses and asks questions.
Yes.
Projects are massaged, removed, questioned, and finally we have the new budget. So this feels like it was a lean budget.
Yeah.
So can you expand upon that and the process, I guess, behind actually bringing it and presenting it to council? Because I know a lot of work was done prior to us seeing the document.
Yeah. So, Mr. Mayor, before I answer that question, I just want to thank you for inviting me back. Mm-hmm. And I really want to thank both you, the Deputy Mayor, and rest of Council for providing the leadership that you did throughout the whole process and welcoming me into the fold. So you kind of explained what happens once the budget is in front of Council, the process. So there is a bit of behind-the-scene process, and it's fairly layered. So for the ease of your viewer and our ratepayer, I kind of subdivided into three key elements. So the first part of budget process, behind the scenes, so to speak, is the planning process. So what we do is we look at our base budget because Town of Orangeville has adopted and have been subscribing to a multi-year budget. So we already start with the base budget from previous year. The first thing we look at is a budget timeline. So usually this is late summer, early fall that we start the process. Late summer, the treasurer or town staff will bring sort of a preliminary report to council, and as you would recall, I did bring a report back in August. So what this report does is provide council with sort of a heads up. This is what the budget document, the first draft of it at least, will look like. Right. And it highlights some very high level key areas. So for example, one of the things you will see is the determination of COLA. Right, cost of living adjustment. You have a robust human resources group, and we would like to retain and attract talented employees. So that's one of the things that we look at. We also look at any legislative changes in terms of grants, in terms of transfer payments. The other thing that council would like to see sort of on the onset of the budget process is what is the overall envelope looking like in terms of the capital budget?
Right.
Are we maintaining the same level? So one of the direction I asked at the beginning of 2020 budget is that are we maintaining the same level of transfer for reserve and reserve fund? Are we maintaining the same level of tax levy for capital budget. So those are the kind of high level direction. So all that happens at the planning stage. So once we are done with the planning stage, now we are heading into the coordination stage. Now, Treasury Department, more so the core budget team, is definitely the lead. But at this point in time, we are reviewing the budget at a divisional level. So Town of Orangeville has 17 divisions. That is, again, further segregated under 3 broader departments: infrastructure services, corporate services, and community services. So at a divisional level, the first go-around of conversation talks about, and as you kind of alluded to, Mr. Deputy Mayor, is are we maintaining the exact level of service that our ratepayers have come to rely on? Is it going to be the same level of service that we have provided last year? If that is the case, then really what is the cost of providing the same level of service, factoring in inflation, factoring in other, growth, and so on and so forth. At this point in time, at the divisional level, we're also looking at the synergies. And what I mean by synergy is there ways to save money? Are we looking at different procurement methods or process, right? So all that happens at the coordination level, right? So we are bringing the budget, the base budget that we started at the planning level, and we're tweaking it. So it's sort of a all hands on board kind of way approach. The third or the final stage before it comes in front of council is the control. And what we mean by control here is, so part of that control is literally legislative and compliance control, because the municipal budget process is highly prescribed under the Municipal Act. So as your town treasurer, my job is to make sure that we are following that prescribed method. It goes through vetting process of our GM and our CAO. We want to make sure, or the senior management team would like to make sure, that the budget is not only just financially sustainable, but it aligns with our strategic initiatives, our strategic plan, our economic development plan, and all the other studies and plans that defines this municipality. We also want to make sure that it encapsulates and incorporates capital projects that come out of our development charges studies, water wastewater studies. So that is at the control level. And of course, finally, it comes before council's purview for review and approval.
So the next item I've got here on my notes is, so you produce a consolidated budget. Can you just quickly tell us what that is?
So very simply put, there are 2 branches of budgeting for the municipal government. One is the operational budget or operating budget, which is your day-to-day. And the other aspect of it is your capital budget. So essentially, these are capital projects. Lion's share of that is maintaining, replacing, and upgrading your current assets. You need physical, tangible assets to deliver services. So at one end, the operational level, you're looking at day-to-day operation. Includes salaries, one of the biggest envelopes, salaries and benefits is one of the biggest envelopes of the operating. On the other hand is the projects, maintaining and upkeeping of your asset is the capital. When you bring these 2 together, that's your consolidated budget.
I want to jump ahead here to the next question. The town's required by law to balance its operating budget each year. The money spent needs to be raised. So where does the money come in to balance our budget? Like, where is it all coming from?
Okay, so it's interesting that you asked that question, because a lot of people see tax revenue the be-all and end-all. Now, a quick aside here, unlike the federal and the provincial government, municipal government, or we are required to provide a balanced budget. We cannot run deficit. So the first thing we do, and as I explained through our 3-prong or 3-step budgetary process, the first thing we determine is, are we keeping the service level status quo? Are we providing all the services we have been mandated, or council have been mandated to provide? How much would it cost us to provide that services from an operating and a capital perspective? Once we have that gross expenditure in place, then we look into our I call it my bucket of financing sources, right? So it's not an exhaustive list, but your viewers can see the slide on the screen. So we look at long-term borrowing. Long-term borrowing is mainly for capital projects. We look into our reserves. We look into development charges, which is more toward new growth. We look into user fees, water, wastewater, building. We look into any provincial...
Parks and recreation fees.
Yes, absolutely.
Fire department charges fees to our surrounding
municipalities. Absolutely, but the reason I mentioned water, wastewater, and building because they're fully sustainable. They're fully user fee-based service
Right.
delivery. We also look into grants, provincial, federal, and there are some other municipal grants. Gas tax is one of the funding source that we have. We look at previous year surplus realized. Right. So once you go through this, at least this 7 sources of funding, taxation is actually the last source that
Right.
we fall back on. So
Right.
we literally go through an exhaustive list of funding a consolidated budget, and taxation essentially is the final subsidy.
Okay. Now, we've got, most of council has reservations about borrowing and using reserves to keep our taxes low. So can you just give us a snapshot of what you think the current financial health of the town is right now, based on levels of debt, levels of reserves?
Okay. So debt in and of itself is neither good nor bad.
Right.
I know there's a bit of a
Well, I've got a mortgage. I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
and-
this is good debt, I think.
and a lot of people have car loan.
I'd be
or-
living in a box if I didn't take a loan.
Right.
Right.
So, like I said, it's just a funding source. It's no different than any other funding sources that I talked about in the previous slide, right? So, the in it of itself is neither good nor bad. It's how you manage it, how you leverage it, gives it that value. In terms of, or more specifically to town of Orangeville, so one of the things I presented during budget deliberation is that the town of Orangeville has tremendous room to take on debt. And what I mean by that is, being an entity of the province do oversee our financial health on an annual basis. So one of the reports that we receive, not just us, all the other municipalities in this province, is called Annual Repayment Limit, or ARL. And what it says is that based on your equity level, your reserve level, based on your sources of revenue, there's a threshold of debt repayment limit that you can take on. So
And this is prescribed by the provincial government.
absolutely, it is
Okay.
prescribed by the provincial government. So as of 2019, because there is a 1-year lag, as of 2019, that particular number or threshold is 10.7 million.
Okay.
The budget that I presented is a multi-year budget, especially on the capital side of things, is a 10-year budget. We are trending anywhere from $3 to $4 million, on average 3.3.
Right.
So we have tremendous room in terms of
Right.
taking on more debt, and that makes it quite optimal.
So we're in a good spot.
We're in a good spot.
And the interest rate is very low.
Absolutely. Cost of borrowing is always
Yeah, now.
lower and
Yeah.
cheaper than dipping into reserve and liquidating your reserve balances.
We got to wrap up shortly. I just wanted, if you could just say, where can somebody, if they have a problem with their property taxes, what's the quick process that they can do to challenge their property taxes?
So if they have a disagreement, or if they think their assessment is too high, then it's definitely MPAC, the Municipal
MPAC.
Property Assessment Corporation,
Okay.
because they are the provincially mandated agency that does assessment. If it's a tax-related question, then please call Finance Division at the town
Awesome.
hall.
Nandini, thank you so much for coming tonight. Really appreciate it. We're going to take a short break. When we return, Deputy Mayor McIntosh and I will discuss some of these projects that were approved in the 2020 budget.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We're back. This is Talk 519 on Rogers TV. I'm Mayor Sandy Brown of the town of Orangeville. And tonight I've got Deputy Mayor McIntosh, Andy McIntosh, with me. We've just had a discussion regarding our budget with our treasurer, Nandini Syed, and Deputy Mayor McIntosh and I are going to talk about some of the large expenditures that the town council has approved this year. So let's go over this list, Andy. The digital first strategy, can you just give me your thoughts about communication and where we're going with this?
Well, obviously communication is number one. We need to communicate better with our citizens. I think we're well on the way to doing that with our new website coming up. One of the items too that this is going to help is cybersecurity. There's so much of that going around where towns are getting locked out of their own computers, more or less, and then held ransom to get back in. So that's money well spent. That's almost a must-have.
Right. And I think, you know, it's a little bit self-serving because we get calls, we get emails, we get social media posts about information that should be easily accessible to everybody. And I think this new communications strategy is going to allow people to go to one source and get a lot of good information.
Yeah, a good example was I read on Facebook somebody was complaining the lights at Alder Arena in the parking lot were out.
Yeah.
Nobody knew that.
Right.
And this person didn't know where to go, who to talk to, so they put it on Facebook.
Right.
And that may not be the ideal way to get.
Yeah. There will be a reporting portal on this website. If you've got an issue, a pothole, street lights out, and the appropriate department head will receive that email and action will be taken. So
much more efficient.
Awesome. The other thing that was approved, Broadway, I guess the interlocking brick on Broadway, starting to get to the end of its useful life. There's some trip hazards out there and other things so I'm really excited to see that. And what are your thoughts about revitalization?
Anyone that's walked down Broadway knows the Sunrise sidewalks are in horrible shape.
Right.
And you know that's dangerous to not only the seniors but everybody, and needs to be fixed. It's just a safety issue that needs to be taken care of.
And one of the things that we talked about was something like stamped concrete as an option. You know, if you Google stamped concrete, you can see some beautiful patterns that are done in plazas and in sidewalks, and I think they provide actually a longer lifespan than these.
That's what I'm aware of. They do,
So
and you may pay more at the beginning, but they're going to last longer.
Again, you talk about return on investment, which we're going to roll right into the next topic here, which is something called EcoChill, which is heating and ventilation system that is planned for Alder Street Arena. It's a big ticket item. I think it was around $2 million. But what we learned, and maybe you can expand upon it, but the payback is quick.
Yeah, 5 to 7 years you've paid it back, basically, is what they're telling us.
And huge savings on energy, right? It says here saves 100% of energy.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
we're going to reduce our
footprint.
Well, you're right. I mean, from a ecological standpoint, the carbon footprint is reduced, but cost savings and the heat generated by this system, for instance, might heat the water in the showers. It might heat the swimming pool, and so it's very efficient use of the energy. Fire department. This is right up your alley.
Right up my alley.
As a former fire chief of the town of Orangeville, Andy. So, what are your thoughts about the projects that the fire department's taken on?
I think they're reasonable. A pumper, which obviously we have to maintain our fire trucks. You can't have fire trucks breaking down on the way to a call. So, I do remember back in the old days that used to happen quite a bit. But nowadays we're much more proficient. So obviously a new pumper replacing probably a 2003 pumper, so it's well overdue. Radios, again, wear and tear on portable radios, they have to be replaced. It's not an add-on, it's just a replacement. Bunker gear, that's kind of a new one in the last 20 years. Bunker gear only lasts 10 years in the best conditions. Right. Depending how many fires you're in, things like that, it could last 5 years.
Right.
So they have to be.
This is the protective clothing that firemen and women wear out. In
the pants, everything.
It has to be up to stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
We send them away to a company for regular cleaning, and that company tells us if this suit is still good enough to wear in a fire. Right. And if they say no, well, it's got to be replaced.
Right. So one of the other items that we talked about during budget time is this potential fire hall. The need for additional space, and we've got opposing views on council. Some people think a new fire hall needs to be built. Some people think that the existing fire hall with an appropriate addition would be good. The only thing stopping that is Credit Valley Conservation and flood. So if I'm not mistaken, you worked for 29 years, is that right?
30.
30, okay, and did you see any flooding in that?
Not even close.
And, you know, so folks, this particular segment's being taped a few days after a major flood event in Orangeville. And I happened to go to the fire hall during that flood event, and it was high and dry.
It was high and dry. I was there
so,
too.
you know,
Yeah.
again, looking at the fiscal responsibility angle, we want the fire department to have all of the space and the necessary, you know, talk about emergency management center and operations center, incorporating that into the fire hall makes sense, right?
Yeah,
so,
it does. And I'm on the mindset of we need to build onto this hall, mainly because it's in a perfect location.
Yeah.
They've had a year now and they can't find a location that's going to really suit their needs. Again, we're dealing with volunteer firefighters too. So we can't go build it way out in the country somewhere. It's got to be reachable by volunteers.
Right.
And again, I can see if we're building a brand new fire hall in a floodplain, CVC saying, no, you can't do it. But guess what? It's already there. It's existing.
For 5 decades.
74, I believe it was built. So it's there.
Yeah.
So, you know.
It's going to be an interesting, but I think, I know that the facility management people in the town have reached out to Credit Valley County. We want something in writing from them. I think even if they say no again, I think you and I are aligned on this. I think we're probably going to be pushing back because it's
Hillsburg was able to build on a floodplain with their station. So I don't know what the difference is between Hillsburg and Orangeville.
No,
but
no.
I will find out.
Yeah, we will find out. So I'm that's going to be interesting. So some of the other things that came up during the budget was replacement of the OSPCA roof. And, you know, we've got Councillor Peters on board, and he tends to look at things in a different lens sometimes. And, you know, we talk about the EcoChill system and the longevity and the payback on that. He brought, you know, the roof replacement at the shelter, the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty of Animals shelter, and putting shingles on the roof have to replace. Whereas if you put a steel roof on, it's I think it's more energy efficient, but it costs more. But it'll last for 50 years or more. And so we're spending more money in this budget period, but it's going to benefit councils
in the long term
for the next 50 years, long after you and I are pushing up the daisies.
Absolutely.
Right?
And again, we were talking earlier on in the show about taking out loans and borrowing money and stuff like that. That's one of the reasons I'm not really opposed to it, because this is going to benefit people for the next 30, 40 years. So why not take a few years to pay it off, spread it out. Instead of putting it all on the taxpayer of today, let's just spread it out a bit with a low interest loan.
Right.
And let everybody, you know, the future pay for it as well, because they're going to be using it.
Well, we had this conversation, Andy, about Harvey Curry Park and the $1 million in renovation that's going on there right now. New splash pad, new climbing gear for the kids, and with money being borrowed, it means that the interest and principal payments are spread out over a long period of time. And the residents 5 years from now are still going to be contributing.
Not even have children right now.
Right.
They're going to be using that park in 5 years.
So, you know, I like your argument on that. I think some borrowing is good, and we have to balance that. It'd be perfect if we had no debt and huge reserves, but you know, just the push and shove of budgeting and the political world we live in doesn't allow that to happen.
No.
So
the days of 5% budget increases they're long gone. It's not going to happen.
People, and again, I think we are, as a society, we're overtaxed sometimes, and I think we have to be cognizant of that every decision we make. Another item that came up was library collections, and you know, one side of me says, okay, people aren't necessarily reading books anymore. Like, I'm talking about hardcover and softcover books, but a lot of people are shifting into digital.
Absolutely.
And although the collection is the same amount of money last year to this year, probably the breakdown, that'll be up to the library board and the staff of the library to determine, but there'll be probably, as we go through the next several years, a larger component of digital purchasing going on because people are reading on their tablets now. When I read, I still like the texture of the newspaper. I still like picking up a book and read, just that.
Yeah.
But
I don't like wearing glasses when I read.
I'm not enjoying the tablet read. I just, that's my own personal opinion.
I'm the opposite.
But
I like tablets.
You like the tablet.
You can make the words nice and big.
Okay.
Things like that. So you don't have to sit there with glasses on.
But
you can just.
But definitely everybody under the age of 30, that's what they're doing,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Either on their phone or on a tablet, and so we need to accept that and make those
adjustments.
So I'm just wondering, are there any other budget issues that you wish had been brought forward this year, or what you're looking forward to in the coming years?
I don't think I ever look forward to a budget. There was no items that I was against. I think we need it. I'm all about, are these needs or are they wants?
Right.
I don't like the wants.
Yeah.
It's nice to want something. I want a lot of things, but I can't afford to go out and buy them.
Yeah.
That's just the way of life.
Well, the other interesting thing that Nandini said was the concern about infrastructure deficit.
Yes.
And this is the amount of money it takes to replace failing infrastructure over the next several years.
Yeah.
And we're in a deficit situation. So we have to be concerned about that going forward. And
I look, and it strikes me because I was the one that purchased it back in 2002, the aerial ladder for the fire department.
Right.
They're only good for 20 years.
Right.
So it's coming out, and that's that's well over $1 million.
Yeah. People are shocked to think of that, but
we paid close to $900 when we got it 20 years ago. So.
And how many times are you going to use it in its lifespan? Not that often.
Yeah.
So Andy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Pleasure.
I'm excited about 2020 for Orangeville, and I'm glad we got through our budget session. So thank you so much. And for those of you at home, we have a Facebook page, Talk 519, and we'll be posting more information. Thank you so much for joining us.